The work of an Iowa-based organization, Bailing Out Benji, kind of helped spark this investigation. Can you tell me about that?
That resolution filed in King County Superior Court requires the company to pay the state $3.75 million with interest.
Bailing Out Benji regularly looks through these records of dogs' movement from state to state.
Bailing Out Benji
played a key part in unraveling a nationwide puppy scheme.
Bailing Out Benji,
an organization that's been working across the country to stop the pipeline of puppy mill breeders.
Bailing Out Benji.
I will use my voice because it will come out, and I will keep doing it until there are no more puppy mill dogs.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills. This week, it's going to be me, Kristen, and Alexis, and we're going to be talking about research and puppy mills and all of the stuff Bailing Out Benji does. We kind of wanted to start with the feedback we've been getting, because we ask every single episode for feedback. And we actually got on Facebook, one of our volunteers left something so thoughtful. Her name is Shannon, and she helps with our online research a lot. So she wrote this this week she shared our post on Facebook and then wrote this alongside of it. And she wrote, "Please listen to this podcast. I shared the first one a few weeks ago, but if you're cleaning, driving, working out, etc., put this podcast on and you'll learn so much about puppy mills. One thing about Bailing Out Benji, they are a true no judgment zone. I've really learned a lot from them over the last few months from volunteering with them. I'm really trying to follow their lead and their way of thinking regarding puppy mills. It is incredibly eye-opening and will completely change your way of thinking." And that made me really happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly the goal, right? Yeah.
Just kind of advancing the conversation. We've all been thinking the same way for so long. Mm-hmm. We've been looking at data the same way for so long and advocacy the same way for so long. Things change, things evolve, and I'm really glad she picked that up. So thank you, Shannon, for listening. Thank you, Shannon, for giving us a fun review. For anyone else listening, you can rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast app, or you can subscribe to us on YouTube and get alerted every time a new episode comes. So it's weird saying today we release our quarterly audit because today in real time when we're recording this, we did release the annual or the quarterly audit that we do of USDA inspections, but we are recording this 2 weeks in the future, in the past, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So Alexis, tell us about the audit.
Yeah. So formerly we called this article our quarterly violation report, but we've kind of been developing how this article looks. Probably the past 6 months to a year, we've probably 6 months, because our last two articles have looked a little bit different because we've struggled with, what's the best way to get this information out? Because for those that don't know, the quarterly violation report is something that we put together that kind of shows all of the violations for cat and dog breeders and dealers that are getting USDA violations when they get inspected by the USDA. And that's those federally licensed breeders. For those of you who have listened to our previous episode, the difference between federal and state, this report looks at those federal violations. And so we at first started compiling just all of the violations for these dog and cat breeding and dealers, and then we'd put them in this report for the public to know, kind of who's getting violations, what's happening at these facilities that are breeding dogs, that are commercial breeders, and just any information that we thought stood out in these reports we put in this report for people.
Where do they sell?
Yeah.
Things like that as well.
We do, yeah, because that's something that we are very fortunate to be able to do with our big database that's very unique. We're able to track who's selling where, and so we do put what pet stores do you sell to, or at least what states they're selling to, because we can't list out for everybody what pet stores they sell to, because some people sell to a massive number of pet stores. So yeah, it's just this information of hey, these people got violations, and hey, be aware, they could be selling in this state, so research before you buy, kind of thing, a little ting, I guess. But yeah, a little off track, but coming back to it, we kind of have developed away from just listing out all of the violations to be more of what's essential for the public to see when they look at this report, and how can we make it where it's not overwhelming, because these reports get quite long because lots of breeders and brokers can get violations during a single quarter. And so we were worried that maybe we were bogging down the public with too much information. And so now what we've developed this report into is more of like an audit. So what are the severe violations that breeders and brokers are getting? What should the public see? Like what type of like health issues or things that are directly affecting the animals are happening and what violations they're getting? And then also like what type of warnings, which are those next step, what comes after like, hey, a breeder got this violation and like, hey, oh, this might be a repeat offense or this might be quite severe. So the USDA might be taking initial steps. And that's where those official warnings come in on our report that we also give people a heads up on is like, hey, the USDA looks like they might be advancing this violation. So here are the people that maybe we should pay a bit closer attention to because this might escalate beyond violations. So we've kind of the noteworthy violations, but also now we're kind of like trying to pull stats for people, something that's like digestible, something that are like little sound bites that you can like keep in your brain and like say to like legislators or people in your community when you're talking about these breeders that might have troubling violations. What type of violations are they getting? So mostly what we're seeing is like it's veterinary care stuff, or it's housing facility violations, or records violations, or the most that we saw this quarter was attempted inspections. They're getting violations for those. So in a long-winded response, sorry, that's kind of what this report has developed into, is really highlighting those violations that stand out that maybe the public should be aware of if like you see this breeder's name in a pet store or online or someone you might be looking into. This is what you should know. And then also just some like general statistics of like what is happening at the USDA level and what states are performing worse or better in violation regards.
Well, so that's kind of when you talk about audit versus report, what we've been evolving away from is putting a list online.
Yes.
Because when we first started the quarterly, it was in 2022. Like that's when we first released our report. And it looks very different then until now. And so much of that is because we're trying to be thoughtful and intentional with what we put out.
Absolutely.
We don't need to put every single thing out there because first of all, people aren't reading it.
No.
When the reports are that long, it's so much work for you and me to like,
Yeah.
you do the report. I put it on our website. Like it's all of the linking. It's all of the files to upload.
Yeah.
Like why?
Yeah.
People want to know. They want to know what's going on, but do they need to know all of it?
And I can confirm, as someone who doesn't spend my entire days in this data, it was overwhelming. Reading through those, it was like, after a while, I'm just like, and then this, and then this, and then this, and reading through it today, the one that came out, it did feel so much more accessible and less overwhelming to just the person who I'm not the data nerd. Like I don't find this stuff fascinating necessarily. I'm just looking to get information. And if I'm doing a search on a particular breeder and this report comes up, it is, like you said, it's not the more trivial kinds of things. Like these are the things you need to know. These are the patterns.
Yeah.
To me, this feels way more helpful for the consumer versus like, if we think about who our audience is, this feels helpful for the consumer and yet has the information and the crumbs to follow for those people who want to dive deeper and do more research that way.
Fair. Not to bring it back to numbers, but to bring it back to numbers.
Always bring it back to numbers. Big fan.
Yeah, just being bogged down, like if we put this into perspective, like 92% of the violations we saw this quarter were non-critical. And so those are kind of violations that don't directly affect the animals. Most of the time. Some of them are questionable. Some of them we look at and we're like, I feel like maybe this should have been a different category, but I'm not the inspector, but a majority of them can be paperwork. They could just be that you didn't document something properly. And so we kind of weighed that cost of like, if 92% of violations are like non-critical and most of them might not be as like severe as direct and critical, maybe we don't need to bog down the report and we can focus on that other like 8% of like what's really happening and what's really problematic as an advocate, or maybe what a consumer might see as problematic.
Well, and to put it into perspective, there were 87 facilities
Yeah,
on the list this week or this quarter.
Mm-hmm.
You would have had to list out 86 different facilities, and then a ton of them just had a missed inspection.
Yeah.
So people they were just scrolling through a list in hopes they recognized the name, or in hopes they saw that they were selling to a store in their community.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided, like, how can we clarify all of this and just condense it? And so now when you click on it, you do only see the critical violations, the duress, and the warnings and fines.
Yes. And that's maybe something we can like input of, like, we have this report, but we also have a supplemental thing that's going to come out. We've been hinting at it a lot, is our search engine, or our interactive map that will still document those non-critical violations. So, like, the public can still know about them, because, I mean, it's so important, especially if, like, someone's getting, like, a history of non-critical violations. Like, that's still an issue, like something's going wrong there, but we're not getting rid of the information altogether. People will still have access to it, but these reports, we definitely needed to focus a bit more. It was our feeling. So I'm glad that we've shifted, because I really hope that the public finds this more helpful for their searches.
Well, and that's important to note too, like what you said about the online engine,
Yes.
still showing all this. We're not saying non-critical violations don't matter.
No.
Our Airtable, like our database that we keep everything in, like we have a whole history. Like there are some facilities we've tracked back to like 2011, 2010, because that's how long we've known about them. So there are places that we want to see that long history.
Yeah.
But when you and I are talking and we're trying to communicate to the public about what matters when it comes to violations, we look at the last 5 years.
Yeah. Got violations like a decade ago, and then you have a clean bill of health. Like, something probably changed, and you probably do credit that you did improve your facility. That's very valid.
Right. Kristen, do you have any questions about our report so far?
I don't have any questions so far. I just love the overall theme of just making it easier for consumers. I think one of our pathways, and I think there are many, but one of the pathways to fixing the puppy mill problem we have is educating consumers. And I'm learning more and more as we do these podcasts, as I learn more, how truly overwhelming it is for a consumer who is committed to buying a dog and wanting to do it responsibly. I have never bought a dog from a breeder. I have not experienced that. So the more I learn about it, I'm like, no wonder. I mean, there's so many barriers in place to make people get to that responsible decision. So the more of those barriers we can knock down. So I'm glad you clarified about, like, we're not saying that the minor infractions don't matter. We're just, again, trying to hit the highlights for consumers trying to use this data, make it less overwhelming, remove those barriers. Because I think that is definitely one of our pathways to ending this puppy mill problem. So I love hearing that we are developing more and more ways to do that. So between these audits and the interactive search engine, that excites me and really gets me going. Just knowing that we are helping people who really do want to do the right thing for them. Which is going to look different for everybody, but yeah.
Well, another thing we're trying to do with the audits is something we really haven't seen coming out in the public conversation or from other organizations, but you're breaking down the types of violations.
Yes.
And that's helpful. I'll let you get into it. Oh, absolutely. But it's helpful because right now people are just saying puppy mills are bad.
Yeah.
This is bad. Animals are living in bad conditions. And for the first time, we're able to say, like, these are the most frequent violations. Yeah. These are the gaps in the laws. These are the ways that we see areas can improve. Instead of just saying it's all bad, we can now say with data, clearly there's a problem with veterinary care. How do we look at that? How does the USDA look at that to improve their conditions if they choose to? Yeah. But that data has never been out there for someone to look at to really determine what the problem looks like.
Yeah. Saying it's bad is not helpful.
No.
That doesn't,
yeah.
It's fine, it's bad, but that doesn't help us fix the problem.
And to use an example, we did an analysis for our home state here in Iowa when we went to Humane Lobby Day last year, and this was very helpful in talking to legislators. As an individual going and talking to your legislator, you can pinpoint hey, in my state, home state of Iowa, we are really struggling with veterinary care, or that our breeders aren't attending the veterinarian properly, or that we are having problems with cleaning, sanitation, housekeeping, and pest control. And that's direct things that hey, if they were going to write a bill or something to help wash out puppy mills, those are things that would definitely be targeted and then could help get rid of puppy mills. So yeah, they definitely, it's a strategic and intentional way of making legislation and trying to really target puppy mills. So, and it's very hard to argue with the data. If you come to your representative, you go to someone or your local officials that you're trying to pass any type of ordinance or legislation, you have that hard data to tell them. And it's very hard to argue with because, this came from the government. This was the government going onto this facility and telling us what was happening. And we're just telling you what the government said. We're forensically auditing it for you, giving it to you in a nice little ribbon bow, easy to use way. And yeah, hard to argue with those facts. So.
And if one of our biggest issues in Iowa, let's say, is veterinary care, what if that's not the problem? What if that's the symptom? And then, why? Do we have a lack of veterinarians in the state? Again, coming from the mental health world, I can say we have a huge lack of psychiatrists in Iowa. It's a problem. And so when you're talking to legislators, it's not, we have a puppy mill problem. It's we have a workforce problem. How do we attract more veterinarians to Iowa? I don't know that is the problem in Iowa. I'm sure y'all do. I don't. I'm just using an example. If that's the thing, then it's yes, this is a problem with breeders, but also it's a problem because we don't have that talent in the state. How do we recruit more talent to the state that enables breeders to have more access to better healthcare? And then there's one problem we can help solve in this giant problem that's not as simple as it's bad.
Yeah, see, I think that's so fascinating to compare the animal welfare world to the mental health world.
I will keep doing it because mental health is what I know.
But it should be, because the way we're all advocating, the way we're all talking about things, animal welfare is so far behind. I don't know how to explain it, but we've been using the same talking points for so long. Yeah. We've been using the same strategies for so long. Every other agency, every other department has tweaked how they're looking at things. So with mental health, you said, what are these systems that have failed? What is leading to this crisis right here? And you mentioned that earlier when we were talking about puppy mills. What are the things that led up to the inspectors not performing well, or that facility? We were talking about specifically the 177 Samoyeds from the Iowa puppy mill, what was it? White Fire Kennels forever ago. That was one woman taking care of 170 dogs. Way too many for her. Absolutely way too many. She was elderly and her husband died. Yeah. And so it's she is not an evil woman, right? She didn't do this to cause harm. What led up to that for her to now need to get all of the animals seized? Were there systems that should have been in place by the Iowa Department of Ag or the USDA that stopped her before she got to that point? And so, I feel we need to bring that conversation into the animal welfare world. What are the systems that are failing people and failing animals?
Fun fact. Did you know that I should be careful saying this on a podcast because I'll probably get it wrong, and we can edit it out if I do. The first child abuse cases were charged under animal welfare laws because there were no laws protecting children from abuse, but there were laws protecting animals from abuse. And so a crafty lawyer said, I am going to use animal laws to protect this child. And that's the first child abuse.
To build on that fun fact, the oldest animal welfare protection organization in this country was founded because the man saw a horse being whipped in the street and he was so mad, but he didn't care that there was a slave next to the horse also being whipped. So that's, again, the framework of how people see animals, right?
Yeah.
I care about animals and not XYZ. And so they really just focus on, I need to help this dog. Yeah. Where Bailing Out Benji, we're okay, if we need to help this dog, that means we have to help the families. And they just need a bag of food, and then that dog doesn't go to the shelter. Or they just need a free vaccine, and then the family gets to keep their dog in their apartment complex. how do we stop animals from, getting into harm's way by focusing on
By
systems
caring about
and
the
by
people.
caring about people.
Intersectionality,
I feel like we have digressed, but all good topics.
Well, okay.
It
So
is intersectionality, right? You can't talk about one or the other. You do a disservice to try to pull it apart and simplify it because it's not simple.
that's why, I don't know, it's gross for people to have us talking about this. I say the word gross, but it's uncomfortable for the people who've been doing this for a very long time for us to be trying to have a different conversation about it. But our conversation is so data focused that it can't be argued. I mean, it can. Everybody can argue anything in this country.
Yeah.
But we're not trying to cause harm. We're not trying to go against our colleagues in this space and say like, hey, we're doing it better or differently or whatever. Like, we want people to have access to the current data. And if organization XYZ doesn't have access to the current data, they know who does.
Yeah.
And they should use that. Like, we want the media to have access to the right numbers and the right data so the public and lawmakers know.
Yeah, because in the end, too, it's harmful to use data that's not accurate because these things can be individually verified. And so when we say like, oh, it's hard to argue with the facts, it's like if you're doing the due process and you're finding the facts in the best way possible, it's a easier way to, I guess, I don't know where I was going with that thought.
No, it's okay. What you're saying basically is data doesn't have an agenda unless someone wants to use it for an agenda.
Yeah. So you can't cherry pick the information, but if you're really just looking at the facts, which is what we're really just trying to do, is just with our audit, get all of this information, tell you exactly what's happening, what are the numbers saying, because we don't have an agenda for this. We don't want to lean into maybe, well, I guess, for us, it doesn't matter if the data doesn't match the current narrative because we're just going to say it no matter what because it's the data.
We're not interested in the narrative.
No. We just want the public to have the facts as they are, which do change over time and will expand as we get more records, but we're definitely just reporting as we're seeing. And so I feel like that could be trusted and hopefully cause less harm because it is how the data is reported or just is what the data is.
Right. So you said the term due process, and that's something we've kind of been talking about in preparation for this episode. So what happens when someone does get a fine or does get a warning? Like, why can't I just kick down the door and save the dogs?
Yeah, I mean, going back to that due process, everyone's owed due process is kind of what we were talking about before, but the USDA is a government agency and therefore they have their own processes that they have to follow. And there's a few ways that we've seen this happen through inspection reports and through those warnings and administrative complaints. We know that it starts off as like, oh, these violations you get, they're allegations.
Which is why photos are taken, videos are taken, and something is documented. Yeah. Because the inspector is making an allegation against the breeder.
Yeah, and so the breeder does still have time to dispute that violation. And so that might be some reasons why we may see a violation disappear, is that they disputed it and it got taken away. But also with this is once you get a violation and there is that proof, this can escalate. You can get an official warning if it's severe enough. Usually we see official warnings for direct violations, which are those violations that happen when an inspector goes onto the property and they see something that is at the time of inspection affecting the dog in a severe or adverse way. They document it as a direct violation. And so those are most often ones that we see people get official warnings for, or they can get them for critical, which are a little bit different and a little confusing because a direct is a critical and a critical is a direct.
And a critical is a new thing anyway. The USDA just added critical within the last few years.
Yes.
You're raising your hand. You're going to ask us a question and we might not know the answer.
I have so many questions right now.
That's okay.
Can we get some examples of what a direct would be or what a critical would be, or is that above your pay grade? Do we know what these?
Yeah.
I don't want to ask it. I know. I don't want to ask something and you're oh.
No, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
So direct is
that just might help my brain.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We can do examples for sure. So direct, as we said, it's kind of timing thing. It's like when an inspector's there and they see something like, oh, it's directly affecting the dog. So this could be like, oh, they went onto your property and they see like a dog that's limping, or a dog that has like tartar buildup, or like some type of medical
Frozen
thing.
water dish you've mentioned, is that an example?
Yes.
Empty
water dishes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's things like those. And then critical, how we've come to understand them is more of like, it's a systemic issue. Like these are like things that like something's going on in the program that's violating the USDA Blue Book, and it's more of a systemic issue. Whereas like direct is like, right now you need to address this right now, but critical can be like a thing like, oh, you can change your process over time.
It's almost like non-critical is very basic, and then critical would be like, okay, so it's elevated then non-critical, and non-critical is paperwork, some veterinary care but not really, and then the critical would be like, these kennels need upgraded. It's not a direct violation. No animals are being harmed. There's nothing protruding into the kennel. That would be direct, because the animal could directly be harmed. But what does this look like overall? It's not meeting our standards, but it's not a direct violation because the dogs aren't in harm's way right now. And it's not a non-critical because this needs to be addressed.
Yeah, but it can still affect dogs. Like, this is why it's so confusing, because it's like...
That helped so much. That really did. I hope it helped our listeners.
Yeah.
That
I could just
or maybe I'm the
like
only
what
one with the question. But either way, it helps me. I'm good.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, the criticals we saw, like, this quarter were, like, there's a facility that is... I don't know if I should say like avoiding inspections, but they have had a lot of attempted inspections since November of 2024. The USDA has been trying to get onto the property, and at first those attempted inspections start out as those non-critical, and now it's changed to critical. So something systemically like long-term, like it's an issue that the USDA cannot access your facility, and so that is now a critical violation. They got 4 critical violations this quarter because of those attempted inspections. And then I think another one did happen because a dog had been like walking around someone's yard in their facility. Like, I can't remember if it was like their personal dog or if it was somebody else, like part of their facility, but they were out in the open and they did end up getting hit by a car and dying. And so that was labeled a critical as well. So it wasn't at the time of inspection, but another time. And like, that's an issue of like long-term, if you let your dogs out and they have free range, that's an issue because there's a potential of danger and harm, and so that's why that also got categorized as critical.
I would argue that it would have been labeled as direct if the inspector was the one who hit the dog with their car. Because it happened right then.
Yes.
Right? So like, that's kind of a difference too.
Yeah, I think the USDA is trying to get that nuance, suppose, but for some people, even for like our volunteers or for us, it can be a little confusing because the phrasing is a little interesting.
Well, and back to laws for a quick second. Some of the, the pet industry, when they try to do sourcing laws. So we're talking, mainly the 2 types of laws are preemption, which means you cannot pass a ban in the state, or a pet store ban, which means you can't operate a puppy store in the state. That's kind of the 2 focused areas for laws. The third is sourcing. And so the state of Connecticut and Arizona, they both have sourcing laws. In it says direct violation. These stores can't buy from breeders with direct. Well, now we have critical in there, and critical has never been written into any of these laws. And so it's just a weird thing that they've thrown into the mix, and it's not really well understood or reported on. So, but talking about the due process part, the people who have, I think it was another article we wrote last year, a breeder hadn't been inspected 14 different times. An inspector came 14 times. And just kept knocking and knocking and knocking, and no one was home. No one was answering. So of course that person did get the normal critical violation that they should in that case. But they had to go through all the red tape. They had to go to the local county and get a search warrant. Like, they have to go through this whole legal process to even get on the property. And I think that's something advocates don't understand.
No.
Because they're like, you're USDA licensed. The USDA should be able to walk on your property at any time. But also we're dealing with individuals and private property.
Yeah, and to that point too, they're a regulating agency. They're not law enforcement that can go on. They don't really have that power per se. I mean, because they do have their proceedings of like they have to get the court involved to tell them that they can do this. They can't just exactly do this. So it does kind of go back to like those, like you get a violation and then it gets escalated to an official warning and then you get an administrative complaint and then another step because they need the decision in order and then you have to do whatever that decision in order says. So it's a court process for them. They can't kick down the door. Though we wish they could, and sometimes that process is a long process like it is for this current facility in this quarter missing their inspections, and as it was for that other breeder who missed so many inspections. There's only so much that they can do, and we can admit that sometimes their hands are tied in these situations.
Well, that's kind of how we bypass it though, by going through the sheriff. So when people see our work and they're like, well, how did you get Henry Summers in Iowa shut down? He'd been on a list for the worst breeder in the country for year after year after year. Yeah. And he was labeled as this horrible breeder and no one was doing anything. The USDA just kept walking by and documenting the same things. We built a case based off those inspection records, but took it out of the USDA's hands and put it on our local sheriff and said, look at this through the lens of our animal cruelty laws. And that was helpful. Yeah. Because the sheriff, that's their whole job, is to investigate crime and to go after crime. Yes. That's not the USDA's job. No. So that's why sometimes you have to think outside the box when you're looking at how to handle problematic facilities. Yeah.
It might be an unpopular opinion, but we definitely have very extremely bad breeding examples, right? We can all point to horrific examples, but that's not most of them. And people, even if they are not breeding dogs in a way that we want, they still are afforded rights as individuals and as business owners. So while we are like, bust down the door, bail out the dogs,
American freedom,
right?
Capitalist freedom.
They still have rights as individuals and property owners and business owners. So we do have to go through those appropriate steps with the goal of rescuing dogs. I felt like I was thinking about saying that, and I was like, people are going to be like, but Steve Cruzy and
I'll go kick down the guy's door tomorrow. If I could, I would.
But that's not most of the breeders with violations aren't falling into those pools. Those are extreme examples, and so we can't base our whole approach on extreme examples.
Right now, that's been the approach. Is to really look at the worst of the worst and pretend like it's the norm. Yeah. And we're not seeing that on the data. Now, I will say, through our field research, we have seen some phenomenal kennels that have chosen to do better. But they're not doing it because the USDA asked them to, or because the state of, Iowa or Indiana asked them to. They're doing it because they're a part of a third-party program. Like, they are choosing to do better because they want to. We have no idea what's happening inside of kennels who are not a part of this program or this mindset. Yeah. They might not be, I am saying this with no foundation, they might not be bad as the worst of the worst that we're seeing. They might also have had some progress that's happened over the years, but we can't see it. No. I get it. There's a fear of sharing and a fear of talking and a fear of being open, but when you allow your industry to only be reflected by the worst of your industry, then that's going to be your reputation. And until you stand apart and say, well, this is what I want my reputation to be, and really work on that side of it, you're all going to be lumped into the same category. And I would say it's the same for us, right? Like, there are really radical organizations out there that trespass and they plant cameras and they do whatever. Like, there are really radical activist organizations. We are not them. We don't want people to think we are them, right? And I think the breeding world is the same way. We, as a society, have never wanted to acknowledge it.
I think any group of people is the same way. Universal truths.
It's so important because as some of these spaces do open their doors, because some of them sell straight to the public. They don't sell to stores. They don't sell online. They have people coming straight to their facility. If the public goes there and they say, wow, this place isn't so bad. And then Mindy Callison from Bailing Out Benji is like, you just supported a puppy mill that takes away from my validity because that customer, the consumer, saw the kennel.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean? The dogs were loved, they were taken care of. And I'm like, nope, you're a bad person. It was a puppy mill. That just makes them lose faith in the rescue world and the advocacy world, in our data. We might not be going to go buy, but other people are. And how do we make sure that their experience is validated? Because like you said, how do you feel when you walk into it? If you feel sad when you walk in, the customer's going to feel sad. And they're going to say, yeah, I shouldn't buy from this place. It's probably a puppy mill. But when you don't feel that and you see the feedback from the dogs who also aren't acting like they are sad and scared and don't want to be there, like it is really hard to argue that's a puppy mill.
And furthermore, I hope that we, using our educational material, can help that person going into that breeding facility to know, does this feel right? Does this look right? I am the forever skeptic who will walk in. I did it when you came back from the last place where I'm like, okay, but are they hiding the dogs elsewhere? Like if I walk in and see a squeaky clean, spotless place, I'm like, well, y'all hiding, what's going on? So like, what are some red flags I can look for? What are some things, like, even if I know very well that we've got places in this country that sell dogs that go to great efforts to try to make themselves look squeaky clean and perfect. And I know better because I work here. But, as we educate people more so that they can go into those places and say, like, okay, I have learned from following Bailing Out Benji that these are the things I should be looking for and that this facility looks pretty good. And then if they still have questions, they know they can reach out and get that verification.
Well, I love it's the education piece that matters, because like what we've done so far when we've talked about what responsible breeding looks like, it's such a small little window. So when we tell them, well, the breeder only breeds one breed of dog. Cool. But I Googled one phone number and that man has 15 different websites and every website's one breed of dog. So that customer thinks when they go to one website, well, look, he's only a Labrador breeder. I can buy from him. They have no idea he has 15 different operations or different websites. And so it's like, even the advice that we've all given for decades has been very holy. Like some of it's been okay, but some of it has been really lacking, and it's led people straight to puppy mills.
So to bring it back to the data, why it's so important to be doing this research, because like there is that lack of transparency, like that breeder that has many different websites, like the public wouldn't know that, or like sometimes, like, I don't think breeders are very willing to maybe share their violation history, because that doesn't help your business.
Or the breeder cancels their license because they don't want people to know. And then they get a new license number with a clean history. But guess what? We still track all of it because you are still on the hook for your violations from last year. I don't care if you got a new license.
No. And that's why it's so important that we're going through the USDA inspection reports monthly. We make this a quarterly audit, but really we're doing it monthly, daily even sometimes. Like, so if anybody's gonna spot any changes, it's gonna be us. If anybody is gonna know what's happening at a facility, whether it's at the federal or even now state level, that we're diving into that even deeper, like we'll have that data for you. So if you are looking to buy and that's the choice that you've made, like we'll hopefully have the information, the most up-to-date information for you, because we are tracking these things so closely, because we have the biggest database. So if anybody is doing some strange things and you can't really connect the dots, we're probably going to be able to connect those dots for you. So,
and like when people are buying, so like again, we still protest pet stores. People are like, oh, if you visit breeders, how can you be so upset at pet stores? It's so helpful when you are a protester or you're an advocate against a pet store and you can say, well, I know that they at least buy from these 3 breeders that have violations. Instead of saying every puppy in this store came from a puppy mill, that makes the public not believe you. I mean, I've been there. I've said that for years. The public is always like, every one of them, all of them, like we all kind of understand there's a gray area. No one just wants to admit it. But when you look at how Bailing Out Benji keeps our data, we can tell you if there's a store that's like, no, I only buy from this one phenomenal person. Cool, you bought 3 puppies from them, but you bought 97 from the bad guy down the road. We can tell you that information, and that's what needs to be communicated. Because while pet stores are saying we don't buy from puppy mills, say even 60% of them are clean facilities, 40% might still be horrific. And those are made up percentages. Do not make a meme out of it and put my name on it. Yeah. I'm just throwing it out there, right? Like you have to look at the full picture in order to educate truthfully and accurately. And that doesn't have to be scary. And I think that we've introduced fear into some advocates because we're now saying, just be a little more specific. That's all we're asking. Be a little more specific with what you say and how you advocate. Yeah. I like this conversation. Yeah. I know. I hope other people do when they're listening in. This month is our anniversary. Bailing Out Benji's 14.
Look at us.
I know.
In our wild teenage years.
Woo! If someone would think so, yes.
That's it. We're in our rebellious teenage years.
Yeah.
And our parents are real mad at us for not following the rules.
As a parent of grown children, I can tell you they'll get over it. Their kids grow up to be amazing people, and you're like, that's right. So it'll be fine. Just, right? Just bear with us. We'll be, we're fine.
We're just growing up. Right? But we're growing up with really good moral compass.
Yes.
And we are figuring things out. But I wanted to bring that up because we are going to be doing a fun little t-shirt fundraiser. That's our little fundraising pitch for this episode. We have a few, and it's not at the time of recording. The link is not live yet, but by the time everyone listens, it will be. So we are going to have some new slogans, some new options. We're really excited for that to come out. So if you want to support us, buy a new shirt.
I like how you just really subtly just told me, like, you don't get to ask people for money this episode. She looked right at me. She's like, so that's our fundraising pitch for this episode.
I mean, do you have another pitch?
I don't. No, I mean, no. Yeah, buy the t-shirts. I can't wait. I have already said send my next paycheck to our t-shirt vendor. Because
and there's going to be hoodies, which I'm so excited
many. This
about.
is the problem. Is not only are there there's 4 style designs, but you can get it in short sleeve, long sleeve, sweatshirt, zip up. I'm like, oh, geez.
The options are endless.
Yeah. I love it.
I love it.
What do you say about our shirts?
It's always conversation starters. Literally, my hat, the shirts, people have to ask. And I think so much of it has to do with so many of them have dogs on them. Our logo is really cute. And the name is that's always the first question. What is Bailing Out Benji? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, funny, you should ask.
What I'm hearing is, please buy our shirts. They're
buy
great conversation starters. And then also, if you need research for those conversations, come to our website, check out our audits, read our articles, or check us out on our social media because we have great facts for those conversations.
And if you feel inspired, reach out to volunteer. Yeah. Jelaine does a phenomenal job at onboarding you, getting you to understand what the volunteer process looks like, and then making sure that you have the data and the research you need for whatever event you're going to do. And then she hooks you up with volunteers in your community.
And we just made some amazing training videos this week. That was fun. A whole team effort to make some videos for our volunteers.
Watch us act.
I love how nice we all are and how close we all are. And I don't mean that in a fake, we're a family way and we love each other. I truly mean Thomas moved to Colorado, and the first question was, Minnie, do we have volunteers out there? And he didn't want to move alone. He knew that we had people out there, and he just assimilated right into Lauren's team. And then when he moved back, he came right back into our team. We had another volunteer who did that. She left Iowa, and she was like, I'm going to Wisconsin. Do we have people there? And it's just such a nice way of moving to a new community and then having friends and having people you at least know have a like-minded way of thinking and communicating, and you maybe have one thing a month to look forward to get out of your house. So I just love that we do all get along pretty well. We're not a cult. No, we do disagree.
No, you know what it is? It's because we're dog people, and dogs make people better.
Do they make every person better?
I mean, if given the opportunity, I think they do. When I meet somebody, that's my two. Do they like dogs and chocolate? And if you don't like dogs or chocolate, I'm going to be kind of we can maybe still be friends, but you're going to have a harder time.
If they don't like dogs and chocolate, they can't even come near my house. I don't know what I'm going to do with you.
I have a lot of questions for you if you don't. Yeah.
I guess I would just add, I know we've said it, I think, in some way every episode, but we're not here to tell people what to do. We're here to tell you how to think and how to problem solve and how to do things that are right for your situation. Because for years, we've all told you what to do. And that has not helped the dogs, and that has not helped the general public. So now we're we're trying something new. And we're trying to empower people to make their own decisions for their family in the most humane way possible.
And that's just what we'll keep doing as an organization, is giving out the data and letting people use those thinking skills and follow it to their conclusion.
Absolutely. So if you're listening, we've given you a lot of ways to help us. You can follow us on social media. You can buy a t-shirt. You can sign up to volunteer. A super easy way is to rate, review, and subscribe. So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else, please feel free to just leave a fun little, a little review. Let us know how you feel, unless you don't like us. Just kidding.
Then don't leave a review.
I mean, you can rate us 1 star. That's fine. I don't care. But it's really helpful if people know how you feel about the podcast and if you're getting anything out of it.
Yeah. And if you feel so inclined, please check out our quarterly audits. They come out every few months, each quarter. So it's new information because it's just live as things come in. We'll keep updating and keep writing, and you guys are welcome to check that out.
And we'll put that in the show notes. So
great.
all the links that we talked about, we'll tuck in there for people to be able to click. Well, thank you everybody for sitting with us again this week, and we will talk to you next week.